I grew up in a little village south of Ottawa, where the allure of a small town was like a cozy blanket over you. Near my house stood a magnificent church, unmistakable in the town when the Sunday morning bells rang out, reaching every ear. My parents were deeply religious and devout, and you could always find them inside with their heads down in prayer. I was raised in a profoundly religious Christian home where my faith in God was carefully cultivated. However, as the years went by, uncertainties grew. I never understood some of the lessons I was taught, especially when things were bad. I kept asking myself, Lord Jesus, please show yourself to me if you truly exist. I didn't get over this uncertainty till I turned 25. That's when I had a deep encounter with Jesus that changed my life, and any doubts that had been there were gone. I was preoccupied with how I looked, as were a lot of young ladies, and I would frequently examine myself in the mirror. My dissatisfaction with my body increased with time. I limited my food intake since I thought I was gaining weight and wanted to maintain my thin figure. Anorexia nervosa is a serious mental health illness that started as a simple desire and progressed. By the time I was 21, I was eating very little and occasionally not eating at all. I was aware of the harm I was doing, yet there was a perverse joy in not adding more weight. At that age, the value of health can frequently be overshadowed by the urge to appear beautiful. Sadly, this way of thinking turned into a severe dread of food. It got to the point that I felt sick at the mere thought of eating. It left my physique in terrible shape. I became really skinny, and my skin turned pale and lifeless. Anorexia had robbed me of my strength at 25. Every meal became into a struggle, and routine chores turned into taxing ordeals. My weak state frightened my family and friends, who pushed me to get medical attention. However, a maelstrom raged within of me. A part of me longed for healing, for being free of this mental and bodily suffering. A different part of me held on to the fear, dreading the treatment that would weaken me even more or alter my appearance in ways I couldn't handle. I was stuck in a fog of doubt, unable to move, divided between optimism and despair by this internal struggle. I turned away from everyone around me and went into my own mental prison, not wanting to let anybody else know how hurt I was. Every day seemed to go on forever, drifting into solitude. I wanted freedom so badly, but I was too scared to ask for it. My spirit felt imprisoned, caught up in an unseen conflict, and on the verge of passing away. In spite of this, I took comfort in my loved ones' unfailing support and their unwavering prayers. They kept me afloat while I went through the never-ending cycle of suffering and uncertainty. My faith turned into a precarious lifeline. I prayed a lot, letting all of my worries and uncertainties out and asking for help and serenity. However, my health kept getting worse. My body grew weaker, and I experienced the weight of isolation and the sting of criticism from the outside world. Then the night arrived that would alter everything. All of a sudden, I was overcome with a severe pressure in my chest that would not go away. Simultaneously, I experienced waves of nausea and a strong trembling throughout my body, similar to that of an earthquake. I assured myself that it will pass and that all I had to do was relax. However, it failed. I was rendered helpless and on the verge of collapsing when my legs gave way under me. I was overcome with panic, my fear of dying and falling into death's arms being more real than ever. Eventually, my consciousness faded like a fading star, and I fell onto the bedroom floor. The boundaries of reality melted into a fuzzy dream, and everything around me seemed to blur. My spirit suddenly separated from my body and soared aloft like a liberated bird in an incredible moment. I looked down from above at my pale, weak body lying splayed across the earth. I hadn't looked in the mirror at myself in such a long time that the sudden transformation was stunning and bizarre. The agony and pain, in spite of this separation, clung to me like a relentless shadow. It was as if my own being was breaking down and life was evaporating from my grasp. I made a valiant attempt to reattach myself to my body, but it was all in vain. I was trapped in what felt like an endless transparent cage where time seemed to be ebbing away. The sound of my mother's footsteps coming up the stairs was then audible to me. From where I was standing, I was just looking at my body on the ground. I attempted to cry out, but it felt as though an invisible force swallowed my voice and made it disappear into the darkness. I tried again once a wave of panic passed, but the quiet persisted. Abruptly, A massive black hole materialized above me, its whirling depths threatening to swallow me whole. This vortex pulled me in, and as I passed into it, everything around me vanished into oblivion. I had the impression that I was floating weightlessly in an infinite emptiness. I was drawn forward by a soft, inviting glow, and as I moved through it, I was treated to an amazing sight. I discovered that a plethora of vivid, fragrant flowers, each flawless and alive, enveloped me. A serene field of turquoise loomed in the horizon, bringing comfort and wiping out any memory of suffering. That was then I realized I had landed in heaven. My grandma materialized in front of me. She looked young and radiant, as though she had just moved from paradise after spending a long time there. Her appearance was exactly as I had recalled her from my early years, and her presence served as a reassuring recollection of a time before I completely understood what death meant. My heart was ecstatic to see her so joyful and alive in this heavenly world. I was so excited to see Jesus that my heart skipped a beat when she asked if I wanted to. Yes, yes, I cried out, my voice full of excited expectation. Gently taking my hand, my grandmother and I strolled through the meadow. A figure appeared as we got closer, and an ethereal light filled my vision. It was Jesus. He was incredibly powerful and soothing, and as he got closer, I'd experienced something I cannot quite put into words. As I caught his gentle gaze, a glance so comforting that it resembled a mother's embrace, tears fell down my face. The warmth in his eyes seemed to take away all of my uneasiness. I told him about my anorexia difficulties and the people around me who didn't seem to care. He assured me that he understood every aspect of my experience as he listened carefully. His assurances of eternal love and love were a balm to my wounded spirit. He exuded strength and wisdom despite wearing a simple robe, had dark brown hair, and kind brown eyes. His calm demeanor had a deep and lasting effect. I told him, "You are a really gorgeous man." "Thank you, but beauty is not the most important thing." He smiled back. His remarks stayed with me deeply meaningful, and we laughed together for a moment. Jesus was a reassuring presence in his tenderness and simplicity that gave me calm. We had deep conversations about life, and many of my confusing questions had clear answers. I sensed an immediate special connection with Jesus. Gently, he told me to go back to my world and impart what I had learned. I said resolutely, "I will." With a sympathetic glance in my direction, he held out his arms. His hug was close and all-encompassing, giving me a tremendous feeling of love and strength that made me feel like the universe was on my side. This embrace left an enduring memory that filled my heart with strength and hope. A shocking shock that seemed like I was falling from a height struck me as I reverted to my physical form. When I opened my eyes, I was in bed and longed for the amazing location I had left behind, a place where warmth and tranquility prevailed over grief and suffering. My head ached, a vestige of vertigo remaining. My mother was worried and wanted to know if I needed to go to the hospital. I responded that I simply wanted some rest and shook my head. I was struck with a profound sense of grief for the beauty I had left behind as I thought back on the amazing experience, but I was also aware of my own purpose and obligations in this world. The next day, I woke up feeling hungry for the first time in a long time. I had a filling lunch and relished the flavors and textures as though they were old friends. Later, my mother brought me to the hospital so that I could be examined, but no abnormalities were found. Astonished, the doctor contacted a few days later to report an unexpected finding. My kidney function had returned to normal, a turnaround he had never seen before, and he was shocked. The real explanation was only known to me. Jesus had touched me and restored my body and soul. The doctor was once again shocked when a follow-up examination a month later revealed significant weight gain and improved health. I worked up the guts to tell my mother about my experience when I got home. Unfortunately, she didn't think I was telling the truth, especially with my vision of my grandma. Despite my scant background knowledge, she'd assumed I must have heard about her from someone else. She refused to believe me, even after I gave her a lot of information. I decided to keep quiet for a while because I was discouraged by her lack of belief. Even though some people might think my story is made up or insane, I'm positive it was a real event that went beyond words. I firmly believe that heaven, where I shall be with Jesus again, is my actual home. I remain faithful in my faith, regardless of whatever skepticism others may have regarding my tale. I'm aware of God's actual presence all around us. I have everlasting faith and strength, knowing that God is always with me, guiding and protecting me, no matter what obstacles I face.